The blood dripped from Clara Langford's fingertips onto the pine needles beneath her, as she pressed a torn strip of petticoat against the gash in her thigh. Teeth gritted against the pain that threatened to make her cry out into the wilderness surrounding her. It was the autumn of 1876, and Clara had been traveling from Oregon to meet her brother in Montana Territory when everything went terribly wrong. The stagecoach she'd been riding had been ambushed 3 days ago by bandits on the mountain trail. The driver had been shot, the horses spooked and bolted, sending the coach careening off the rocky path. Clara had been thrown clear, tumbling down an embankment into thick brush. When she'd finally come to her senses and climbed back up to the trail, she found the coach smashed against a boulder. The other passengers gone, taken or fled, she couldn't know. All she knew was that she was alone in the Washington Territory wilderness, with nothing but the clothes on her back and a small satchel that had somehow stayed strapped across her body. She'd been walking for days now, following what she hoped was a southward path toward some kind of civilization. The wound on her leg had happened yesterday when she'd slipped on loose shale and fallen against a jagged rock. It wasn't deep enough to be fatal, but it was deep enough to slow her down and attract predators if she wasn't careful. Clara fumbled with the makeshift bandage, her fingers shaking from exhaustion and blood loss. She'd found a small cave entrance behind a waterfall and had crawled inside to tend her wound away from the elements. The late afternoon light filtered through the cascading water, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. She could barely see what she was doing, and the binding kept slipping. "Damn it all," she whispered, her voice hoarse from lack of water. She tried again to tie the fabric tight enough to stop the bleeding, but her hands wouldn't cooperate. That was when she heard the footsteps. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. She pressed herself against the cave wall, reaching for a rock to use as a weapon. The footsteps were heavy, deliberate. A bear, a bandit who'd tracked her. Either option was equally terrifying. A massive silhouette appeared through the waterfall, backlit by the fading sunlight. The figure was enormous, broad-shouldered and tall, with long hair that hung past the collar. Clara raised her rock, prepared to fight even though she knew she had little chance of survival. The man ducked through the waterfall entrance and stopped dead when he saw her, his hand going to the rifle slung across his back. For a long moment, they stared at each other, both frozen in surprise. He was the most imposing man Clara had ever seen. Well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders that seemed to span half the cave entrance. His chest was broad beneath a buckskin shirt, and his arms were thick with muscle. He had a rugged, weathered face, tanned from years in the sun, with intense blue eyes that assessed her quickly. His dark brown hair fell in waves to his shoulders, and a thick beard covered his jaw. Everything about him screamed danger, wildness, and raw masculine power. "Don't come closer," Clara managed to say, though her voice shook. The man's eyes moved from her face to the blood pooling beneath her leg, then to the pathetic bandage she'd been trying to secure. His expression shifted from wariness to something that looked almost like concern. "You're hurt," he said. His voice was deep, rumbling like distant thunder. "I can manage," Clara insisted, even as another wave of dizziness washed over her. "You're doing a terrible job of it," he said bluntly. He slowly removed his hand from his rifle and held both palms up. "I'm not going to hurt you, but that wound needs proper tending and you look like you're about to pass out." "Why should I trust you?" Clara asked, though even she could hear how weak she sounded. "Because if I meant you harm, we wouldn't be having this conversation," he said. "And because in about 10 minutes, you're going to lose consciousness from blood loss, and then you won't have a choice in the matter anyway." It was the brutal honesty that convinced her more than anything. Clara lowered the rock slightly. "What do you want, right now?" "To stop you from bleeding to death in my cave," he said. "This is where I shelter sometimes when I'm hunting in this area. Didn't expect to find anyone else here." "Your cave." Clara felt absurdly like she should apologize. "Let's worry about property rights later," he said, moving slowly toward her. "I'm Liam Foster. I live up in these mountains, trap and hunt for a living. I've tended plenty of wounds, animal and human. Will you let me help you?" Clara looked down at her leg, at the blood-soaked fabric and her trembling hands. She had no real choice, and they both knew it. She nodded. Liam moved with surprising grace for such a large man, kneeling beside her and setting down a leather pack she hadn't noticed he was carrying. "I need to see the wound," he said. "Is it just your leg, or are you hurt elsewhere?" "Just the leg," Clara said. "And some bruises and scrapes, but nothing serious." "When did this happen?" Liam asked as he carefully peeled away her makeshift bandage. His hands were large and calloused but surprisingly gentle. "Yesterday. I fell on some rocks." Clara hissed in pain as the fabric came away, pulling at the wound. "It's deep," Liam said, his brow furrowing. "But clean, which is good. You're lucky. Another inch and you might have hit something important." He looked up at her, those blue eyes steady and calm. "This is going to hurt. I need to clean it properly and stitch it closed." Clara nodded, biting her lip. She'd known stitches were probably necessary. Liam worked efficiently, pulling supplies from his pack. He had a small bottle of whiskey, clean cloth strips, a needle and thread, and various herbs Clara didn't recognize. "Drink this," he said, handing her the whiskey bottle. "All of it. All of it." Clara's eyes widened. "You're going to want it," he assured her. "Trust me." Clara took a long swig, the alcohol burning down her throat and into her empty stomach. She coughed, eyes watering, but took another drink, and another. By the time she'd consumed a quarter of the bottle, warmth was spreading through her limbs and the edges of her vision were softening. "Good," Liam said. He'd been preparing while she drank, tearing his cloth into strips and threading his needle. "Now, I'm going to clean this. It's going to burn like hellfire. If you need to scream, scream. There's nobody up here to hear you but me and the bears." He wasn't exaggerating. When he poured the whiskey directly into the wound, Clara's vision went white with pain. She did scream, her hand flying out to grab something, anything. Her fingers closed around Liam's forearm, and she was dimly aware of how solid it felt, like gripping an oak tree. He didn't pull away, just let her squeeze as hard as she needed while he worked. "You're doing good," he murmured, his voice low and soothing. "The worst part's over. Just need to stitch you up now." Clara panted, tears streaming down her face. The whiskey was definitely helping, making everything feel distant and fuzzy. She felt the needle pierce her skin, felt Liam's fingers pressing the edges of the wound together, but it seemed to be happening to someone else's body. "What's your name?" Liam asked as he worked, and Clara realized he was trying to distract her. "Clara," she managed. "Clara Langford." "Clara Langford," he repeated. "Pretty name. Where are you from, Clara?" "Oregon, Portland." She winced as the needle went through again. "I was traveling to Montana, to my brother." "Long way to travel alone," Liam observed. "I wasn't alone. There was a stagecoach, but we were attacked. Bandits, I think. Everything happened so fast." Liam's hands paused for just a fraction of a second. "When?" 3 days ago, up on the mountain trail to the north." "I heard gunshots that direction 3 days back," Liam said quietly. "Couldn't get there in time to help." He resumed his stitching. "You're lucky to be alive." "I don't feel very lucky," Clara said, trying for humor though it came out shaky. "You're alive, you can walk, and you had the sense to find shelter and try to tend your wounds," Liam said. "That's luckier than most would be in your situation." He tied off the final stitch and sat back, examining his work. "There. That should hold." Clara looked down at her leg, now neatly stitched and wrapped in clean cloth. The pain had subsided to a dull throb, though whether that was from Liam's skill or the whiskey, she couldn't say. "Thank you," she said, meeting his eyes. "I mean it. You probably saved my life." Liam shrugged, already packing his supplies away. "Couldn't leave you to bleed out, wouldn't sit right." He glanced toward the cave entrance where the light was fading fast. "It's going to be dark soon. You can't travel in your condition anyway. We'll camp here tonight." "We," Clara echoed. "You think I'm going to leave you alone out here?" Liam raised an eyebrow. "You can barely stand, you have no supplies, and there are mountain lions in these woods. Not to mention those bandits might still be around." Clara wanted to argue, wanted to assert her independence, but she was so tired and everything hurt, and the thought of spending the night alone in this cave was terrifying. "I suppose I don't have much choice." "Not really," Liam agreed. He stood, moving to the cave entrance. "I'm going to gather firewood and check my snares. Don't try to move around. You'll pull those stitches." He disappeared through the waterfall before Clara could respond. She leaned back against the cave wall, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. Her whole body ached, and the whiskey was making her drowsy. She let her eyes close, just for a moment. When she opened them again, there was a fire crackling in the center of the cave, smoke rising to escape through some crack in the ceiling she hadn't noticed before. Liam was crouched by the fire, turning something on a makeshift spit. The smell of cooking meat made Clara's stomach clench with hunger. "You're awake," Liam observed. "Good timing. Rabbit's almost done." Clara tried to sit up straighter and gasped at the pain that shot through her leg. "Easy," Liam said, moving to her side. He slipped a strong arm behind her shoulders, helping her into a more comfortable position and propping her against his pack. "Your leg's going to hurt for a few days. Try not to move it too much." "How long was I asleep?" Clara asked. "Couple hours." "Sun's fully set now." Liam returned to the fire, pulling the rabbit off the spit and cutting it into portions with a hunting knife. He brought her a piece on a flat stone that served as a plate. "Eat. You need to rebuild your strength." Clara accepted the food gratefully, tearing into it with an appetite she hadn't felt in days. It was simple fare, just roasted meat with no seasoning, but it was the most delicious thing she'd ever tasted. Liam ate his own portion in silence, watching the fire. Clara studied him in the flickering light. He had to be in his late 20s, maybe 30 at most. Young for a mountain man, but he carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how to survive in this harsh environment. There was something solid about him, something dependable. "Why do you live up here?" Clara asked when she'd finished eating. "In the mountains, I mean. It must be terribly lonely." Liam was quiet for a long moment. "I like the solitude," he finally said. "Spent some time in the army down in the territories. Saw things I'd rather forget. When I got out in '74, I came up here. It's peaceful, quiet, nobody telling me what to do or where to go." "You fought in the Indian Wars?" Clara asked softly, among other things. Liam's voice was flat, making it clear he didn't want to discuss it further. "What about you? Why Montana?" "My brother runs a general store in Helena," Clara explained. "Our parents died last year, and I've been living with our aunt in Portland, but she's getting older and needs to move in with her daughter in San Francisco. Thomas wrote and asked if I wanted to come live with him and his wife. Help in the store, and you said yes." "There wasn't much keeping me in Portland," Clara admitted. "I worked as a seamstress but barely made enough to live on. Thomas offered me a fresh start." She laughed bitterly. "Though I didn't expect it to start quite like this." "Life rarely goes according to plan," Liam said. He poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks dancing upward. "But you're alive, and that's what matters. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." Clara asked again. Liam looked at her, his blue eyes serious. You can't make it to Helena alone, not in your condition. Those stitches need at least a week to start healing, and even then you'll need to be careful. The nearest town is Centralia, about 3 days south of here. I can get you there safely." "You don't have to do that," Clara protested, though relief flooded through her at the offer. "I know I don't have to," Liam said. "I want to. Besides, I need to go down for supplies anyway. Winter's coming and I need to stock up." Clara wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her pride and independence, but she was too grateful and too tired. "Thank you," she said simply. "I'll find a way to repay you, I promise." "Don't worry about it," Liam said, settling back against the cave wall. "Get some rest. We'll leave at first light." Clara nodded, adjusting herself as comfortably as she could. The fire was warm, the cave was dry, and for the first time in 3 days she felt safe. She watched Liam through half-closed eyes as he maintained the fire, his profile strong and steady in the firelight. She fell asleep wondering what kind of man chose to live alone in the wilderness, and why his presence made her feel safer than she'd felt in a very long time. The next morning, Clara woke to find Liam already up and moving around the cave. He'd caught fish from the stream beyond the waterfall and was cooking them for breakfast. Her leg throbbed with pain, but when she looked down, the bandage was clean and fresh. "Did you change my dressing?" she asked, surprised. "While you were sleeping," Liam confirmed. "Needed to check for infection. It looks good, no swelling or redness." Clara flushed, realizing he would have had to expose her leg to do that. But his manner was completely professional, and she reminded herself that he'd already seen the wound when he stitched it. "How are we going to travel?" she asked. "I don't think I can walk very far." "You're not going to walk," Liam said. He gestured to a contraption he'd built while she was sleeping, a type of travois made from branches and rope. "You're going to ride." Clara stared at the makeshift stretcher. "You can't possibly drag me all the way to Centralia." "I can, and I will," Liam said matter-of-factly. "I've hauled heavier loads than you over longer distances." "But it will take forever," Clara protested. 3 days, maybe 4 given the terrain," Liam said. "I've made the trip before." "There's a trading post about halfway where we can rest." Clara wanted to argue, but the determined set of Liam's jaw told her it would be pointless. She ate the fish he'd prepared, gathered her few belongings, and allowed him to help her onto the travois. He'd padded it with pine boughs and his own bedroll to make it more comfortable. "Ready?" Liam asked, securing his pack and rifle. "As I'll ever be," Clara said, gripping the sides of the travois. Liam picked up the poles and started walking. Clara was amazed at how smoothly he moved despite pulling her weight. His broad shoulders and muscular back flexed with each step, but he showed no sign of strain. They descended from the cave and headed south through the forest, following trails that were invisible to Clara's untrained eye. The journey was long and uncomfortable, despite Liam's efforts to make the ride smooth. Clara tried to stay quiet, not wanting to complain, but every bump and jostle sent pain shooting through her leg. Liam seemed to sense her discomfort, stopping frequently to check on her and adjust her position. Around midday, he called a halt in a small clearing beside a creek. He helped Clara off the travois and settled her against a tree where she could dip her hands in the cool water. "How's the leg?" he asked, crouching beside her. "It hurts," Clara admitted, "but it's bearable." Liam nodded, unwrapping the bandage to check the wound. His touch was gentle despite his rough hands. "Still looks good. No infection." He rewrapped it carefully and sat back. "You're tough, Clara Langford. Most city women would be crying by now." "Who says I'm not crying on the inside?" Clara tried to joke, though it came out more serious than she'd intended. Liam gave her a small smile, the first she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, softening the hard edges and making him look younger. "Fair point." They ate a cold lunch of dried meat and berries Liam had gathered, then continued their journey. As the afternoon wore on, Clara found herself watching Liam more than the surrounding forest. There was something mesmerizing about the way he moved, so confident and capable. He seemed to belong to this wilderness in a way she'd never belong anywhere. "How long have you lived up here?" she asked, needing to break the silence. "2 years, give or take," Liam replied without turning around. "Set up a cabin about 10 miles north of where I found you." "It's rough, but it's home. Don't you miss civilization? People?" "Sometimes," Liam admitted, "but not enough to go back. People are complicated. The wilderness is honest. It'll kill you if you're not careful, but it won't lie to you or betray you." Clara heard the weight of experience in his words. "Someone betrayed you." "More than one someone," Liam said quietly. "But that's in the past, not worth dwelling on." They fell into silence again, but it was a comfortable one. Clara found herself relaxing despite her pain and uncertain situation. There was something reassuring about Liam's steady presence, his calm competence in the face of any challenge. As the sun began to set, Liam found another suitable campsite, this one in a natural shelter formed by overhanging rocks. He built a fire, checked Clara's wound again, and prepared dinner from the supplies in his pack. "Tell me about your brother," he said as they ate. "What's he like?" Clara smiled, grateful for the distraction from her discomfort. "Thomas is 5 years older than me. He's kind, steady, reliable. The opposite of me in many ways." "How are you different from kind and reliable?" Liam asked, raising an eyebrow. "I'm impulsive," Clara said. "I act before I think. Thomas always has a plan. He warned me that traveling by stagecoach was dangerous, told me to wait until he could arrange a safer route. But I was impatient, wanted to get there quickly." She looked down at her bandaged leg. "I should have listened." "You couldn't have known what would happen," Liam said. "And beating yourself up about it won't change anything." "I suppose not," Clara agreed. "What about you? Do you have family?" "Had," Liam said shortly. "Parents died when I was young. No siblings. Joined the army at 18 because I had nowhere else to go." "I'm sorry," Clara said softly. Liam shrugged. "It was a long time ago. I'm used to being on my own." "That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt," Clara observed. Liam looked at her then, really looked at her, and Clara saw something flicker in his blue eyes. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "No," he said quietly. "I suppose it doesn't." That night, Clara lay awake long after Liam had banked the fire and settled into his own bedroll on the other side of the clearing. She watched him in the dying firelight, this strange man who had appeared out of nowhere to save her life. He was nothing like the men she'd known in Portland, the shopkeepers and clerks who populated her world. Liam was raw and untamed, shaped by violence and solitude into something harder and stronger than most men could ever be. But beneath that hardness, Clara sensed something else. A loneliness that matched her own. A need for connection that he'd buried under layers of self-reliance and isolation. She wondered what it would take to reach that buried part of him, and why she wanted to try. The next day followed a similar pattern. Liam pulled her through the forest with tireless determination, stopping regularly to check her wound and make sure she was comfortable. They talked more, sharing stories about their lives. Clara told him about growing up in Oregon, about her parents who died in a fire, about her dreams of one day having a real home again. Liam shared carefully edited stories about his time in the army, about learning to track and hunt, about the satisfaction of building something with his own hands. By the time they reached the trading post that evening, Clara felt like she'd known Liam for months instead of just 2 days. There was an ease between them that surprised her, a natural compatibility that made even the silences comfortable. The trading post was a rough collection of buildings run by a grizzled old man named Jack who greeted Liam like an old friend. "Didn't expect to see you till next month," Jack said, eyeing Clara with open curiosity. "And with company, no less. Found her injured in the mountains," Liam explained. "She's traveling to Montana. I'm taking her to Centralia." "Montana's a long way," Jack observed. "You sure you want to make that trip, son?" "I'm taking her to Centralia," Liam repeated firmly. "She can arrange proper transportation from there." Jack nodded slowly, but Clara caught the knowing look in his eye. He'd seen something between them that she wasn't ready to acknowledge yet. Jack offered them a room for the night, a luxury after sleeping on the ground. There were 2 beds, narrow but clean, and Clara nearly wept with relief at the thought of a real mattress. Liam helped her inside and onto one of the beds, then excused himself to discuss supplies with Jack. Clara seized the opportunity to wash properly in the basin of water Jack had provided. She was a mess, her dress torn and stained with blood and dirt, her hair a tangled disaster. She did what she could to clean up, wincing as she worked around her injured leg. When Liam returned, he carried a bundle under his arm. "Jack's wife passed a few years back," he explained. "He's been holding on to her things. He says you can have some of her dresses if you want them." Clara felt tears prick her eyes at the kindness. "I can't possibly accept." "Jack insists," Liam said. "Says they're just gathering dust and they might as well be useful." He set the bundle on the bed beside her. "I'll give you privacy to change. I'm going to check on the horses." After he left, Clara went through the bundle. There were 2 simple dresses, both practical calico in good repair, as well as some undergarments and a warm shawl. She changed into one of the dresses, grateful to be out of her ruined traveling dress. When Liam returned, she saw his eyes widen slightly at the sight of her in clean clothes with her hair brushed and braided. "You look better," he said, his voice a little rough. "I feel better," Clara admitted. "Thank Jack for me. This is incredibly generous." That night, they shared a meal with Jack, who regaled them with stories of his years running the trading post. Clara laughed more than she had in months, and even Liam smiled a few times. When they finally retired to their room, Clara felt something warm and unfamiliar blooming in her chest. She was falling for Liam Foster, she realized. This gruff, solitary mountain man who'd saved her life and treated her with such unexpected gentleness. It was foolish, impractical, and completely impossible. She was heading to Montana, and he was heading back to his isolated cabin. There was no future for them, but her heart didn't seem to care about practicalities. The final day and a half of travel to Centralia passed too quickly. Clara found herself dreading their arrival, knowing it meant saying goodbye to Liam. She tried to memorize everything about him. The way he moved through the forest, the concentration on his face when he checked her wound, the rare smiles that made her heart skip. Liam seemed quieter too, as if he was also feeling the weight of their impending separation. He was gentler with her, more attentive, his hand lingering when he helped her up or adjusted her position on the travois. They reached Centralia in the late afternoon of the 4th day. It was a small but bustling town, with a main street lined with shops and businesses. Liam pulled the travois directly to the doctor's office, helping Clara inside despite her protests that his stitching was fine. The doctor, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Sarah Mitchell, examined Clara's leg with approval. "Whoever stitched this did excellent work," she said. "Clean, even, and no sign of infection. You'll have a scar, but the wound should heal completely in a few weeks." "Liam did it," Clara said, smiling at him. "He saved my life, Doctor." Mitchell looked at Liam with new respect. "You have medical training, Army medic for a spell," Liam said shortly. "Picked up some things." Dr. Mitchell nodded. Well, you did fine work. She'll need to stay off that leg for another week. Keep it clean and dry. Come back in a few days and I'll check those stitches. Liam helped Clara to the town's boarding house, where he paid for a room for 2 weeks despite her protests. The landlady, Mrs. Henderson, was a kind woman who promised to look after Clara. Standing in the boarding house parlor, Clara realized this was goodbye. Liam would head back to his mountain cabin, and she would eventually continue to Montana. They might never see each other again. "Thank you," she said, the words completely inadequate for everything he'd done. For everything. "I owe you my life." "You don't owe me anything," Liam said. His blue eyes were intense, searching her face as if trying to memorize it. "You take care of yourself, Clara Langford." He turned to leave, and Clara felt panic rise in her chest. She couldn't let him walk away, not like this. "Liam, wait," she called out. He stopped, turning back to her. Clara took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "Will you stay, just for tonight? I know you need to get back, but I thought maybe we could have dinner. A proper goodbye." Something flickered in Liam's expression. Hope, maybe, or longing. "I'd like that," he said quietly. They had dinner at the boarding house, Mrs. Henderson serving them a proper meal with vegetables and bread and even pie for dessert. It should have been a celebration, but instead it felt like a wake. Every moment was bittersweet, precious because it was one of the last they'd have. After dinner, they sat on the boarding house porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. Clara's leg was propped up on a stool, and Liam sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "What will you do?" Liam asked. "Once your leg heals, continue to Montana, I suppose," Clara said, though the words felt hollow. "Thomas is expecting me." "He's lucky to have you," Liam said. "What about you? Back to your cabin?" "That's the plan," Liam said, but he didn't sound enthusiastic about it. Clara gathered her courage. "You could come with me. To Montana. I'm sure Thomas could use help in the store, or you could find work in Helena. It's a growing town, lots of opportunities." Liam shook his head slowly. "I'm not cut out for town life, Clara. I tried it after the army and I just couldn't do it. Too many people, too much noise. I need the wilderness." "Then I could stay here," Clara said desperately. "Centralia's a nice town. I could find work and you wouldn't be so far away in your cabin. We could see each other sometimes." "Clara." Liam's voice was gentle but firm. He took her hand, his rough fingers wrapping around hers. "You have family waiting for you, a future. You can't give that up for someone you've known for 4 days. 4 days that meant more than 4 years of my life in Portland," Clara said fiercely. "Don't tell me you don't feel this too, Liam. I see it in your eyes when you look at me." Liam was quiet for a long moment, his thumb stroking the back of her hand. "I do feel it," he finally admitted. "But that doesn't mean acting on it is the right thing to do. You deserve more than a mountain hermit who doesn't know how to live around people anymore." "Shouldn't I be the one to decide what I deserve?" Clara asked. "In a perfect world, yes," Liam said. "But this isn't a perfect world. You're injured, grateful, not thinking clearly. In a few weeks, when you've healed and had time to think, you might feel differently." "I won't," Clara insisted. "Then if you still feel the same way in a few weeks, send me a letter," Liam said. "Care of the Trading Post. Jack knows how to reach me." It wasn't what Clara wanted, but it was something. A thread of connection, a possibility of a future. She nodded slowly. "I'll write to you, I promise." "Good," Liam said. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Get some rest, Clara. Your leg needs to heal." He stood to leave, and Clara watched him with her heart breaking. At the porch steps, he paused and turned back. "Clara." "Yes." "These 4 days meant more to me than the last 2 years combined," he said quietly. "I want you to know that." Then he was gone, disappearing into the twilight, and Clara was left alone with tears streaming down her face and a determination burning in her heart. She would heal. She would write to him. and somehow she would find a way to make this work. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of healing and planning. Clara's leg improved steadily under Dr. Mitchell's care. The stitches were removed after 10 days, leaving an angry red scar that would fade with time. Clara was able to walk short distances with a cane, and Dr. Mitchell assured her she'd make a full recovery. But as her body healed, Clara's heart ached. She thought about Liam constantly, wondering what he was doing, if he was thinking about her too. She'd started a dozen letters to him but couldn't find the right words to express everything she felt. Mrs. Henderson had become a confidante of sorts. The older woman listened to Clara's story with sympathy and offered surprisingly practical advice. Men like that, the ones who have been alone too long, they forget how to reach for happiness, Mrs. Henderson said. They convince themselves they don't deserve it or don't need it, but everyone needs connection, dear. Everyone needs love. How do I convince him of that? Clara asked. You don't, Mrs. Henderson said. You just show him what life could be like. Let him decide if it's worth reaching for. Clara had sent a telegram to Thomas, explaining what had happened, and that she'd be delayed. His response had been worried but understanding, urging her to take all the time she needed to heal and offering to send money if she needed it. But Clara found herself hesitating to buy a ticket to Montana. The thought of leaving Centralia, of putting more distance between herself and Liam, made her chest tight with anxiety. 3 weeks after Liam had left, Clara made a decision. She walked into the general store and asked the owner, Mr. Daniels, if he needed help. My niece usually helps me, Mr. Daniels said slowly. But she just got married and moved away. I've been managing alone, but it's been difficult. I have experience, Clara said. I worked in a dry goods store in Portland. I can sew, keep books, manage inventory, and I need work. Mr. Daniels studied her. Aren't you heading to Montana? I've decided to stay in Centralia, Clara said firmly, at least for a while. Well, I could certainly use the help, Mr. Daniels admitted. The pay isn't much, but it's steady work. I'll take it, Clara said. She wrote to Thomas that night, explaining her decision to stay in Centralia for a few months. She didn't mention Liam, but somehow she thought Thomas would understand anyway. Her brother had always been perceptive. Then she wrote to Liam. She kept it simple, telling him she'd decided to stay in Centralia, that she'd found work at the general store, and that she would love to see him if he came to town. She ended with a line that took all her courage to write. I meant what I said on that porch. My feelings haven't changed. She sent the letter to the trading post with the next supply wagon, then settled in to wait. The days turned into weeks. Clara threw herself into her work at the general store, learning the inventory and getting to know the townspeople. She rented a small room above the milliner's shop, simple but comfortable and her own. She made friends with Dr. Mitchell, Mrs. Henderson, and several other women in town. Centralia was a good place, she realized. A community that was rough around the edges but fundamentally kind. She could be happy here, even if Liam never responded to her letter. But she hoped desperately that he would. 6 weeks after she'd sent the letter, Clara was in the general store taking inventory when the bell above the door chimed. She called out without looking up, I'll be right with you. Take your time. Clara's head snapped up at the familiar deep voice. Liam stood in the doorway, looking exactly as she remembered, tall and broad and solid, his long hair tied back, his blue eyes intense. Liam, she breathed, her heart hammering. Clara. He took a step into the store, then stopped as if unsure of his welcome. I got your letter. I can see that. Clara set down her inventory book with shaking hands. You're here. I needed supplies anyway, Liam said, but his eyes told a different story. Thought I'd come to town instead of sending an order to Jack. I'm glad you did, Clara said softly. They stared at each other across the store, the air thick with tension and unspoken words. Finally, Liam cleared his throat. "Your leg," he said. "How is it?" "Healed completely," Clara said. "Just a scar now. Dr. Mitchell says you did an excellent job." "Good," Liam said. "That's good." More silence. Clara wanted to run to him, to throw her arms around him and never let go, but she forced herself to stay still. This was his move to make. "Clara, I've been thinking," Liam started, then stopped. He took off his hat, turning it in his hands. "These past 6 weeks up in that cabin, I've been alone like always, but it felt different this time. It felt lonely." Hope bloomed in Clara's chest. "Did it?" "I kept thinking about you," Liam continued. "Wondering if you were okay, if your leg was healing right. Wondering if you'd really meant what you said or if it was just gratitude talking." "It wasn't gratitude," Clara said firmly. "I think I started falling for you the moment you knelt beside me in that cave and told me you were going to help me." Liam's eyes widened. "Clara, I'm not an easy man. I'm used to being alone, doing things my way. I don't know how to be part of a couple." "Neither do I," Clara admitted. "I've never really been in love before. We'd have to figure it out together." "I live in a cabin in the mountains," Liam said. "It's rough, no luxuries, just me and the wilderness." "I know," Clara said. "And I'm currently living in a room above a hat shop, working in a general store." "I'm not asking you to change your life, Liam. I'm just asking you to let me be part of it." Liam crossed the store in 3 long strides, stopping right in front of her. He was so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the silver flecks in his blue eyes. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Once I claim you, Clara Langford, I won't let you go easily." "I'm sure," Clara whispered. "I've never been more sure of anything." Liam's hands came up to cup her face, his calloused palms gentle against her skin. "Then I'm yours," he said. "If you'll have me." "Yes," Clara breathed, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was everything she'd dreamed of and more. Liam kissed her with a hunger that matched her own, his arms wrapping around her and pulling her close against his solid chest. Clara's hands fisted in his buckskin shirt, holding on as if she was afraid he might disappear. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Liam rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said simply. "I've tried to fight it, tried to convince myself it was impossible, but I love you." "I love you too," Clara said, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I love you so much. Marry me," Liam said suddenly. "I know it's fast, I know we should probably court properly, but I don't want to wait. I've wasted enough time being alone." "Yes," Clara said immediately. "Yes, I'll marry you." Liam kissed her again, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. They were both laughing when Mr. Daniels emerged from the back room. "Well," the store owner said with a knowing smile. "I suppose congratulations are in order. Clara and I are getting married," Liam announced, his arm tight around her waist. "I had a feeling," Mr. Daniels said. "The way she talked about you, the way she kept watching for the supply wagon hoping for a letter. I told my wife you'd come for her eventually." They were married 3 days later by the town's minister, with Dr. Mitchell and Mrs. Henderson as witnesses. Clara wore one of the dresses Jack's wife had given her, with wildflowers in her hair that Liam had picked that morning. Liam wore clean buckskins and had trimmed his beard, looking more handsome than Clara had ever seen him. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Liam kissed Clara with such tenderness that several of the watching townspeople wiped away tears. There was a small celebration at the boarding house, with food and music and well wishes from the people Clara had come to know. But Clara could see the tension in Liam's shoulders, the way he stayed close to the edges of the room. He was trying, she knew, but the crowd was overwhelming him. She made their excuses shortly after dinner, and they walked hand in hand to the small house on the edge of town that Liam had rented for the night. Tomorrow, they would head to his cabin to begin their new life together, but tonight was just for them. Liam carried her over the threshold, and Clara laughed at the traditional gesture from such an untraditional man. He set her down gently, his eyes searching her face. "Are you nervous?" he asked. "A little," Clara admitted. "Are you terrified?" Liam said honestly. "I've never done this before. Never been with anyone like this." "Neither have I," Clara said softly. She took his hand, pressing it over her heart. "But we'll figure it out, together." Liam bent and kissed her, slow and deep, and Clara felt the last of her nervousness melt away. This was right. This was meant to be. That night, they learned each other in the flickering candlelight, gentle and patient and full of love. Liam was reverent, treating her like something precious, and Clara felt herself fall even deeper in love with this strong, tender man who'd chosen her. Afterward, lying in Liam's arms with her head on his broad chest, Clara felt more at peace than she ever had in her life. "No regrets?" Liam asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "None," Clara said firmly. Only that I didn't come for you sooner," Liam admitted. "I wasted 6 weeks trying to convince myself I could go back to my old life." "You're here now," Clara said. "That's what matters." "I'm here now," Liam agreed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head, "and I'm never leaving you." They left for Liam's cabin the next morning, Clara riding the horse Liam had brought for her. The journey took 2 days, following trails through the mountains that were invisible to Clara's eyes but clear as roads to Liam. When they finally arrived at the cabin, Clara understood what Liam had meant when he said it was rough. It was a single room, built from logs, with a stone fireplace and minimal furniture. But it was solidly built and weathertight, and there was something appealing about its simplicity. "I know it's not much," Liam started, but Clara interrupted him. "It's perfect," she said. "It's our home." Over the following weeks, they settled into a routine. Liam taught Clara how to survive in the wilderness, how to fish, how to identify edible plants, how to read the signs of changing weather. Clara brought her own skills, sewing curtains for the windows, organizing their supplies, creating a sense of comfort in the rough cabin. They made love every night, learning each other's bodies and hearts with growing confidence. Liam was an attentive lover, always making sure Clara found her pleasure before seeking his own. Clara discovered she loved the feeling of his strong hands on her skin, the weight of his body over hers. But it wasn't all easy. Liam had nightmares sometimes, waking in a cold sweat from dreams of his time in the army. Clara learned to soothe him, holding him close and reminding him he was safe. And Clara had her own moments of doubt, wondering if she could really adapt to this isolated life so different from everything she'd known. They talked about it one evening, sitting by the fire after dinner. "Do you miss town?" Liam asked carefully. "People, sometimes," Clara admitted. "But I don't regret being here. I love you, Liam. I love our life. We could go to Centralia more often," Liam offered. "Every few weeks instead of every few months. You could visit with Dr. Mitchell and Mrs. Henderson, stay connected." "I'd like that," Clara said, grateful that he understood her need for occasional companionship. "And when we have children," Liam continued, his voice a little uncertain, "we'll need to be closer to town anyway. For the doctor and such." Clara's heart skipped. They'd talked about children in the abstract, but this was the first time Liam had spoken of it as a real possibility. "You want children?" "I want a family," Liam said, pulling her into his lap. "With you, I never thought I'd have that, never thought I deserved it, but you've shown me I was wrong." "I want that too," Clara whispered, her hand coming up to cup his bearded cheek. "I want everything with you." They made love that night with a new urgency, a new purpose, and Clara prayed that their love would create new life. Winter came to the mountains in full force, bringing snow that piled high around the cabin. Liam had prepared well, with stores of food and firewood, and Clara discovered she loved the snowy silence, the way the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them and the crackling fire. She also discovered, in early December, that she was pregnant. Dr. Mitchell confirmed it during one of their trips to Centralia, and Clara cried with joy when the doctor shared the news. Liam's reaction when she told him was everything she'd hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down gently, worried he'd hurt her. "We're having a baby," he kept saying, his voice filled with wonder. "We're having a baby." "We are," Clara confirmed, laughing through her tears. "In the summer, Dr. Mitchell says." Liam knelt before her, his large hand spanning her still flat stomach. "I'm going to take such good care of you both," he vowed. "I promise." "I know you will," Clara said, running her fingers through his long hair. "You're going to be an amazing father." True to his word, Liam was extraordinarily protective during Clara's pregnancy. He insisted they spend more time in Centralia as her due date approached, renting a small house so Clara would be close to Dr. Mitchell. He barely let Clara do anything strenuous, hovering anxiously whenever she so much as lifted a pot. Clara found his protectiveness both endearing and occasionally frustrating, but she understood it came from love and fear. Liam had lost so many people in his life. The thought of losing her or their child terrified him. "I'm not made of glass," she reminded him gently when he tried to stop her from kneading bread. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." "Not my woman," Liam said stubbornly. "Not carrying my child." Their son was born on a hot July afternoon in 1877, after a long and difficult labor. Liam stayed by Clara's side the entire time, holding her hand and whispering encouragement. When the baby finally emerged, wailing lustily, Liam wept openly. "A boy, Doctor," Mitchell announced, placing the squirming infant in Clara's arms. "He's perfect." Clara looked down at her son, at his tiny red face and shock of dark hair, and felt her heart expand with a love she'd never imagined possible. When she looked up at Liam, she saw the same overwhelming emotion reflected in his face. "What should we name him?" she asked. "Lucas," Liam said immediately, "after my father, if that's all right with you." "Lucas Foster," Clara tested the name. "It's perfect." They stayed in Centralia for 2 months after Lucas was born, giving Clara time to recover and adjust to motherhood. Liam was a devoted father, utterly besotted with his son. Clara often woke in the night to find him standing over the cradle, just watching the baby sleep with an expression of fierce love and protection. When they finally returned to the cabin, it was with plans to build a larger house closer to town. "Lucas needs to be near other children," Liam said. "And you need to be near the doctor and your friends. I've been thinking about it, and I think I can do it. Live closer to town, I mean." "Are you sure?" Clara asked. "I don't want you to give up the wilderness for us." "I'm not giving it up," Liam said. "I'm finding a balance. The wilderness will always be part of me, but you and Lucas, you're my heart now. You're what matters most." They found land 5 miles outside Centralia, close enough for easy access to town but isolated enough that Liam didn't feel crowded. Liam built them a proper house, 2 stories with multiple rooms, working through the fall and winter while they stayed in town. The house was ready by spring, and they moved in with Lucas, now a chubby, happy 9-month-old who was just learning to crawl. Clara planted a garden, decorated the rooms, and created a real home. Liam continued to hunt and trap, but he also took on occasional work as a guide for settlers coming into the territory. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Clara became even more integrated into the Centralia community. helping at the general store occasionally, and joining a quilting circle with Dr. Mitchell and several other women. Liam learned to tolerate and even occasionally enjoy social gatherings, though he was always more comfortable with Clara and Lucas than in crowds. They had 2 more children over the next 5 years, a daughter named Catherine in 1879 and another son named Michael in 1881. Their house rang with laughter and chaos, and Liam thrived as a father, patient and loving with all 3 children. "Did you ever imagine this?" Clara asked one evening as they sat on their porch, watching the children play in the yard. Lucas was 6 now, teaching 4-year-old Catherine how to skip stones while 2-year-old Michael toddled after them. "Never," Liam admitted, his arm around her shoulders. "I thought I'd die alone in that cabin, another forgotten veteran who couldn't adjust to peace." "Instead you have this," Clara said, gesturing to their children, their home, their life. "Instead I have everything," Liam corrected, turning to kiss her. "Because I have you. You saved me, Clara, not just from loneliness but from myself." "We saved each other," Clara said softly. "I was just as lost before I met you. I just didn't know it yet." They sat together in the fading light, comfortable in the silence they'd shared since that first night in the cave. Clara thought back to the terrified woman she'd been, bleeding and alone in the wilderness. She'd thought her life was over, that the bandits and the wilderness would kill her. Instead, the wilderness had given her everything. A home, a family, a love deeper than she'd ever dreamed possible. "Tell me again," Liam said quietly, a request he made often. "About the cave." "I was trying to bandage my leg," Clara began, the story familiar now, worn smooth by repetition. "And I heard footsteps. I thought I was going to die." "Instead you found me," Liam continued, picking up the thread. "Instead I found you," Clara agreed. "This enormous, terrifying mountain man who turned out to have the gentlest hands. And the most stubborn wife," Liam added, making her laugh. "Who loved you enough to chase you down and make you admit you loved her too," Clara finished. "Best thing that ever happened to me," Liam said, kissing her temple. "You and those infected wounds." "It wasn't infected," Clara protested, as she always did. "Could have been the way you were bandaging it," Liam teased, as he always did. They watched their children until the sun set, and it was time to bring them in for dinner. Lucas carried Michael on his shoulders, Catherine chattering away about the stones she'd skipped. They were a family, complete and happy, built on a foundation of love that had started in a cave behind a waterfall. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara and Liam made love with the comfortable intimacy of long partnership. They knew each other's bodies as well as their own now, knew exactly how to bring each other pleasure. Afterward, lying in Liam's arms, Clara thought about how far they'd come. From strangers in a cave to husband and wife, from wounded and alone to parents of 3 beautiful children. From 2 people who'd given up on happiness to 2 people who'd built a life full of joy. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Liam rumbled back, his arms tightening around her. "Always will." The years continued to pass in a blur of happiness. Lucas grew into a strong, responsible boy who loved the wilderness as much as his father. Catherine was bright and curious, always asking questions and demanding stories. Michael was the quiet one, thoughtful and observant, content to watch and learn. Liam taught all 3 children how to track, hunt, and survive in the wilderness. Clara taught them to read and write, using borrowed books from Dr. Mitchell and lessons she remembered from her own schooling. They were raising children who could thrive in both the wild and civilization, comfortable in both worlds. When Lucas was 12, they made the trip to Montana to finally meet Clara's brother Thomas. The journey took 2 weeks with the children, but it was worth it to see Thomas's face when he met his nephew and nieces for the first time. "You chose well," Thomas told Clara privately. "He's a good man, your Liam. I can see how much he loves you." "I chose the best man," Clara agreed, watching Liam show Lucas and Michael how to set up their camp while Catherine helped Thomas's wife, Margaret, prepare dinner. They stayed in Helena for a month, and Clara marveled at how much the town had grown. But she didn't regret her choice to stay in Washington. Her life was in Centralia now, with Liam and their children. On their last night in Montana, Thomas pulled Liam aside. Clara watched them talk, saw Thomas clap Liam on the shoulder and Liam nod seriously. Later, when she asked what they'd discussed, Liam smiled. "He thanked me for making you happy," Liam said. "Told me he'd worried about you being alone after your parents died. Said he's glad you found someone who appreciates you." "What did you say?" Clara asked. "That I'm the lucky one," Liam said simply. "Because I am." The trip back to Centralia felt like coming home. As they crested the final hill and saw their house in the valley below, Clara felt her heart swell with contentment. This was where she belonged, with this man and these children in this wild and beautiful place. Life continued its steady march forward. Lucas turned 15, then 16, growing taller and broader until he nearly matched his father in size. Catherine blossomed into a young woman, smart and capable, with her mother's determination and her father's quiet strength. Michael remained the observer, but Clara saw in him a deep wisdom beyond his years. On a warm summer evening in 1889, Clara and Liam celebrated their 12th anniversary. The children had arranged a surprise dinner, with flowers on the table and a cake Catherine had baked. After dinner, Lucas took his siblings out to give their parents some privacy. 12 years, Clara marveled, sitting with Liam on their porch as the sun set. "It feels like yesterday and forever at the same time." "Best 12 years of my life," Liam said. He looked older now, silver threading through his dark hair and beard, lines around his eyes from years of smiling. But he was still strong, still capable, still the mountain man who'd saved her life. "Mine too," Clara agreed. She was 34 now, her once slender figure softened by 3 pregnancies, her hands calloused from years of work. But she'd never been happier. "You ever think about that cave?" Liam asked. "About how different things could have been?" "All the time," Clara admitted. "If you hadn't found me, I would have died there. If I hadn't convinced you to stay for dinner in Centralia, you might have gone back to your cabin and never come back. There were so many moments where this could have gone differently." "But it didn't," Liam said firmly. "We found each other, we chose each other. Everything else is just details." "Important details," Clara said. "The details of our life." "The best life," Liam agreed. He pulled her close, and they sat together watching the stars emerge, comfortable in the silence of shared history and deep love. More years passed. Lucas left home at 18 to try his hand at prospecting, though he came back regularly to visit. Catherine married a young lawyer in Centralia when she was 20, a good man named David who treated her with respect and love. Michael stayed home longer, helping his father with the hunting and trapping business they'd built together. Clara and Liam became grandparents when Catherine had her first child, a daughter named Clara after her grandmother. Holding her tiny namesake, Clara was transported back to that cave, to the moment when she'd thought her life was ending. Instead, it had been just beginning. "We did good," Liam said, watching Clara with their granddaughter. He was in his 50s now, his hair and beard fully silver but still strong and vital. "We did wonderful," Clara corrected. "Look at everything we built. Our children, our grandchildren, this life. It's more than I ever dreamed possible." "More than either of us dreamed," Liam agreed. And it all started because you were stubborn enough to survive that fall and I was curious enough to check my cave." "Fate," Clara said. "Love," Liam corrected. They were both right. As the 1890s arrived and the new decade brought changes to the territory, Clara and Liam remained steady. They were pillars of the Centralia community now, respected and loved. Liam served occasionally as a guide and tracker for law enforcement, his skills still sharp despite his age. Clara was known for her kindness and wisdom, women coming to her for advice and comfort, but their greatest joy remained each other and their family. Lucas returned from his prospecting adventure with a bride, a spirited young woman from Colorado. Catherine gave them 3 more grandchildren. Michael surprised everyone by becoming a teacher, opening a small school in Centralia where he taught children to read and appreciate both books and nature. On their 25th anniversary in 1902, their children organized a celebration at the church. Nearly the whole town came, bearing gifts and well wishes. Stories were told of how Clara and Liam had met, the tale growing more dramatic with each retelling. "Tell us the real story," one of the grandchildren begged. "How Grandpa saved Grandma." Clara and Liam exchanged glances, a lifetime of understanding passing between them. Then Liam began to speak, his deep voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "I found your grandmother in a cave, trying to bandage her own wounds," he said. "She was the bravest, most stubborn woman I'd ever met. Still is. He tended my wounds carefully," Clara continued, "made sure they healed right, and in the process he healed my heart too. She saved me just as much as I saved her," Liam said, taking Clara's hand. "Maybe more." "We saved each other," Clara said firmly, squeezing his hand. "And we've been saving each other every day since." The celebration continued late into the night, but eventually Clara and Liam slipped away, walking hand in hand back to their house. The same house Liam had built with his own hands over 2 decades ago, expanded and improved over the years but still fundamentally the same. They sat on their porch, in the same spot where they'd sat countless times before, and looked up at the stars. 25 years, Liam mused. Quarter of a century. "And I'd do it all again," Clara said. "Every moment, every challenge, every joy. I'd choose you every single time." "Even knowing how stubborn I am?" Liam asked, a smile in his voice. "Especially knowing how stubborn you are," Clara said. "Because that stubbornness kept you alive long enough to find me, and my stubbornness kept me alive long enough for you to find me. We were meant to be," Liam said simply. "Yes," Clara agreed. "We were." They sat together as the moon rose. 2 people who'd found each other against all odds and built a love that had lasted through hardship and joy, through raising children and building a life. They'd grown old together, silver-haired and lined with age, but their love was as strong as it had been that first night in the cave. "No regrets?" Liam asked, a question he'd asked many times over the years. "Not a single one," Clara answered, as she always did. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Liam Foster." "And you're the best thing that ever happened to me, Clara Foster," Liam said. "My stubborn, brave, beautiful wife." They kissed in the moonlight, a gentle kiss of long familiarity and deep affection. 2 people who'd started as strangers in a cave and become soulmates, partners, the loves of each other's lives. The years continued, as years do. Clara and Liam grew older but remained devoted to each other and their ever-expanding family. They became great-grandparents, delighting in the newest generation. Their house was always full of visitors, children and grandchildren coming to hear stories and seek advice. As they moved into their 70s, they slowed down but never stopped. Liam could still track a deer through the forest, though he didn't go as far as he once did. Clara could still sew a perfect seam, though her fingers moved more slowly. They took walks together every evening, hand in hand, talking about their day and their memories. "Do you remember," Clara said one evening, "the first time you kissed me? In the general store in Centralia." "I remember everything," Liam said. "The way you looked in that calico dress, the hope in your eyes when you saw me walk through that door. The taste of your lips when I finally stopped being a coward and claimed what I wanted most." "You were never a coward," Clara protested. "I was terrified," Liam admitted. "Terrified that I'd ruin your life, that I wasn't good enough for you. It took me 6 weeks to work up the courage to come back." "But you did come back," Clara said. "That's what matters. You chose love over fear." "Best decision I ever made," Liam said. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The same sky they'd watched for decades, from the same mountains where they'd first met. "I want you to know," Clara said suddenly, stopping and turning to face her husband, "that every single day with you has been a gift, every moment, even the hard ones. Especially the hard ones because we faced them together." "Clara," Liam said, his voice rough with emotion. "Let me finish," Clara said gently. "We're not young anymore, Liam. We won't have forever. But I need you to know that I've lived a full, beautiful, perfect life because of you. Because you found me in that cave and cared for my wounds and then cared for my heart. You gave me everything I never knew I needed." Liam pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "You gave me a reason to live," he said into her hair. "You gave me a family, a home, a purpose. Before you, I was just existing. After you, I was truly alive." They held each other as the sun set, two people who'd built a lifetime of love on a foundation of kindness and care. Two people who'd met by chance and stayed together by choice, day after day, year after year, through joy and sorrow and everything in between. They made it to their 50th wedding anniversary, a golden milestone that few couples reached. The celebration was enormous, with family coming from across several states. Clara and Liam sat at the center of it all, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, a dynasty of love that had started with a wounded woman and a lonely mountain man in a cave behind a waterfall. 50 years, Lucas said in his toast, his voice thick with emotion. 50 years of showing all of us what true love looks like, what commitment means, what it means to choose each other every day no matter what. To Clara and Liam, the crowd chorused, raising their glasses. That night, alone in their room, Clara and Liam lay together as they had for 5 decades. 50 years, Clara whispered. "We made it. We made it," Liam agreed. "And if I had 50 more, I'd spend every one of them with you." "I love you," Clara said, "more than words can say." "I love you too," Liam said. "Always have, always will." They fell asleep in each other's arms, two souls so intertwined that they were more one than two. They'd started their journey in a cave with wounds that needed tending and hearts that needed healing. They'd found both in each other, and had spent the next 50 years building a love that would echo through generations. Their story became legend in Centralia, passed down from parents to children as an example of what love could be. The mountain man and the wounded woman who'd saved each other and built a dynasty of love. It was a story that inspired, that gave hope, that proved that love could bloom in the most unexpected places. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth. Sometimes the person who saves your life is the person you were always meant to find. Sometimes fate puts you exactly where you need to be, even if it's bleeding and alone in a cave in the wilderness. Sometimes the ending you think you're facing is actually a beginning in disguise. Clara and Liam Foster knew this truth better than anyone. They'd lived it, breathed it, built their entire lives on it. And as they spent their final years together, Surrounded by the love they'd created and the family they'd built, they knew without question that every moment had been worth it. Every struggle, every challenge, every moment of doubt had led them here. To a life full of love, to a family that spanned generations, to a partnership that had endured through everything life could throw at them. They'd started with wounds that needed tending, and they'd ended with hearts that were completely, perfectly whole. It was more than either of them had ever dreamed of. It was everything they'd never known they needed. It was, quite simply, perfect. And it all started because a mountain man found a woman bandaging her own wounds, and instead of walking away, he knelt beside her and tended them carefully, making sure they healed right. In doing so, he healed both of them in ways neither could have imagined, creating a love story for the ages.